What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh. This is Overlanding Now. And today what we're going to be discussing is why we chose the Jeep Gladiator as our next family overland rig. Now, behind the scenes, what you guys haven't seen is we have driven the Toyota 4Runner Venture, and we also drove the brand new Defender before we decided to make the choice to go with the Gladiator. Now, in this video, what I'm going to do is tell you why we chose the Gladiator, if we're happy with the choice that we made, and kind of go over some of the specs and give you guys information before you go and decide what your next family overland vehicle should be. So, if you guys haven't already, hit the subscribe button so you can come along for the adventures. At any point, if you feel this video is worthy of your time, press the like button. Be sweet. And also, we are going to ask you, leave some comments about the vehicle that you chose and why, and if you're searching for a new vehicle that is good for family adventures. Our family's growing, so we need more space. We chose the Gladiator. I'm going to tell you why. Now let's get started by talking about the Defender. So I didn't even know the Defender was being made again until we were on our way back from a trip out west, and we were driving through Missouri of all places, and I saw a new Defender. And I told my wife, I said, what is that? And we got up close to it and I'm like, holy crap, that's a new Defender. So naturally, like anybody, Courtney was driving and I just started doing research on the Defender, because at this time Courtney was pregnant, and we knew that we were going to be looking for a new vehicle to better accommodate a growing family. So we decided to start taking a look into the Defender. Now, at that point, I didn't even know they were being made. And the only reason I was even considering the new Defender was simply because of its iconic name. Now, if you know anything about Land Rover and the Defender, it has been around forever. And the Defenders previously, before they stopped making them, was probably one of the most, if not the most iconic off-road vehicle ever made. So as we were driving, I started looking and I was wondering, okay, I know they're going to be a little bit more expensive, but let's dig into what makes the Defender in 2021 versus the Defender from back in the day. So after we got home from our trip, things had settled down a little bit. I did what any normal human being would do. I spent countless hours on YouTube dissecting the Defender. And I was watching videos about the price, because everyone knows it's pretty expensive. I was watching videos about it going off-road and seeing what its capability was. I was watching videos about what type of modifications that you could do to the new Defender. And all of this information I was just trying to kind of take in and dissect, because what I knew is the Jeep platform was really good off-road. So I was hesitant to even consider the Defender. My wife loves them and they are awesome looking vehicles, but I wanted to know everything I could before we even went and drove one. So next on our list was the 4Runner. Everybody's seen 4Runners, and I'm a huge fan of the Toyota 4Runner after it's rigged out. So after you got your tent, you got your bigger wheels and tires, you know, maybe you get a lift. I'm all about the TRDs and I'm all about the 4Runner Ventures. Now, we decided to take a look at the 4Runner Venture, and there was multiple reasons why. So the TRD comes with the TRD package. Now, that's the wheels, the badging, the suspension, all of the TRD components also come on the 4Runner Venture minus the suspension. Now, the reason that didn't matter for us is because I intended to change the suspension out anyways to give us something that was more comprehensive for what we do. And when I was looking at the TRD Pro versus the Venture, The only difference truly is the suspension. But what you cannot get on the TRD Off-Road Pro, I don't know, there's so many of them. What you cannot get is the KDSS. Now that's the Kinetic Dynamic Suspension System. And that does not even come as an option on the TRD Pro, which quite honestly does not make any sense why the top trim level for the 4Runner, you can't even get the KDSS. Now the KDSS is something that kind of behaves like a solid front axle. Obviously you have a solid rear axle on the TRD Pro, but up front you have independent front suspension. So what that KDSS does is it allows for more articulation and wheel travel on the 4Runner. Now, you cannot get that on the TRD Pro for whatever reason. It's not even an option. So as I was starting to kind of go through my research and take a look at the different options and the things that I liked, the KDSS was an absolute must-have if we were going to even consider moving to the Toyota platform. Then there's obviously the Gladiator. Now, we have been in the Jeep ecosystem for quite a while now. So being a part of the ecosystem of Jeep and understanding its drawbacks and also understanding what it's really good at is something that we already had a lot of information on. So we weren't making these decisions pretty much like we were just buying our first overland rig. And in this video is to help those people that are maybe buying your first overland rig or you're considering the different options. When it comes to large purchases or anything that's going to cost our family a significant amount of money over time, I do tons of research. And YouTube is the greatest place to do that research. Now, you're getting a lot of opinions when you're on YouTube. So what I'm going to try to do is just keep this video to strictly facts. Strictly the facts that I know about each platform based on the information I've done. So you can either agree with it or disagree with it. I don't really care. But the information is going to be factual. So the Jeep Gladiator was obviously something that I have wanted for quite a while. The reason I wanted it is because of the truck bed option. Now, the JL is great. It is an off-road beast, and just like any Jeep, you're going to have its on-road drawbacks. Where the other two vehicles, the 4Runner Venture and the Defender, do not have the on-road drawbacks, but in my opinion, they have the off-road drawbacks. So like I said, the Jeep Gladiator or Jeeps in general have their on-road drawbacks. And what I would say are the biggest drawbacks to the Jeep Gladiator or the JL or the JK or any Jeep is they're loud. That may not bother some people. It may really bother other people, but driving down the road, the wind noise in a Jeep is already loud. They made them like a box. So it's literally like taking a cardboard box and driving down the highway in it. As you can imagine, it's not extremely aerodynamic. So it does have a lot of wind noise. Now, the second drawback, which has its flip side, is the solid front axle. The solid front axle actually causes a lot of wandering on the road. Now, that is me being a little bit dramatic. It's not a lot of wandering, but your vehicle is definitely harder to control with a solid front and rear axle, where the Defender and the 4Runner have independent suspension all the way around. The 4Runner, solid rear axle, independent front suspension. So that makes driving the vehicle on the highway so much better than driving a Jeep on the highway. Now, the thing I know about Jeep and the Jeep platform, whether it be JK, JL, Gladiator, TJ, is those vehicles off-road, in my opinion, now this is opinion, I said I was gonna give you a lot of facts, and I'm giving you facts, but I also cannot help but throw in my opinion a little bit, because being in these vehicles off-road is absolutely unstoppable. There's very few times we have had to turn around or we have gotten stuck in a situation in our Jeep JL. So from an off-road capability standpoint, it's really hard for anybody to make the case to me that there is a better off-road vehicle. Don't get me wrong, the Toyota 4Runner, the Defender, the Tacoma, all of these vehicles are extremely comprehensive. They're freaking sweet rigs. I get it. But I cannot be convinced that Jeep does not have the most off-road capable directly from the factory vehicle in the market. So as I was making this decision, there were more than just the off-road capability things that I had to take into consideration. And the reason being is our family is expanding, which means we're gonna have more stuff, we're gonna have more people, and we're going to have to find a better way to travel. The JL, I mean, you see people like Epic Family Road Trip and then other really large families that pack out their Jeep Wranglers and they travel with 4 or 5 people across the country. I'm sure that's possible. I've seen it, we know it's possible, but what I know is it's not very comfortable. And it's packing out your Jeep it's an art form. I mean, we were at Sam's Club yesterday and I was packing the Jeep because we had so much stuff in there, and I was like, I feel like I'm on a trip. I'm trying to make all this stuff fit. So that's one of the issues with the Jeep for me, is it is rather small on the inside. Now, if you're just 2 people or 1 person, and even a family of 3, you can make that work with no issues. We've done it. I would have loved to have some more room, but I can't say that I was completely restricted and didn't have enough space. So since we're talking about space, I probably should have got like the exact cubic feet of each one, but if I got the exact cubic feet for each one and you were able to say, oh, I know exactly how big that is based on how many cubic feet that is, that in itself would be impressive. But when it comes to space, I know the JL didn't have a ton of it. It had enough, but not a ton of it. Not when we're adding a baby seat and all of these other things, a pack and play. There's a lot of stuff that, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm just learning. I'm just learning how much stuff there is that you're gonna need to bring with you in addition to what you already pack. So, but the 4Runner is massive. I mean, I remember opening the hatch of it and I was like, this is freaking huge. There's a lot of leg space. There's a lot of space on the interior of a 4Runner. So if space is something you're after and you can kind of deal with the other stuff, or you're indifferent about solid front axles and that kind of thing, well, then the 4Runner is a good option because it has tons and tons of interior cargo space. Now, the same with the Defender. I would say the Defender is in between the Jeep and the 4Runner in terms of interior cargo space. So it also has a lot of interior cargo space, and it has a lot of leg room behind the front seats, which is something the Gladiator and the JL quite honestly does not have. Okay, so let me tell you why we didn't go with the Defender. And the reason we didn't go with the Defender, there's one big reason, which is that air suspension. The air suspension in the Defender is very comfortable on the road. And I have watched tons of videos and gotten tons of information about how good it is off-road. And everyone claims that the Defender off-road with the air suspension is an incredible off-road rig. But just watching the videos, you can see the Defender comes off of 4 wheels often. Now, that's because there's not as much articulation with that air suspension. So what happens if you're going over a bump, and I do this with my hands a lot, I don't know why, but if you're going over a bump like this, you're gonna be on 3 wheels. And the videos that I was watching these Defenders come up on 3 wheels and kind of tip to one side or tip to the other side. And for anybody who has rolled a vehicle, I have, and it is a scary thing. And with my family in that vehicle, I mean, I just prefer not to go tumbling down a cliff. But I'm not comfortable with that air suspension. I'm not comfortable with it off-road, and I'm also not comfortable trying to fix something. If something happens on the trail, in the Jeep, or even in a 4Runner, I can kind of get a good idea of what I need to do to band-aid it to get somewhere to actually get it fixed. I have no clue where to begin with air suspension on a Land Rover. So the second very obvious reason is the price. The one that we looked at was 75-ish thousand. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's a freaking machine. Right on, cool. But for 75 grand, and that's really just stock. That's 75 grand. That doesn't come with all of their X110 packages or any of that crazy stuff. It's $75,000 just to drive it home, which is 30% more than the other two vehicles and almost 50% more than the 4Runner. So when I started thinking about, okay, that's a lot of money to spend on a vehicle that I'm literally going to beat the heck out of. So, which I guess it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other, because I'm going to beat the crap out of the Gladiator too. But $75,000 to beat the crap out of a vehicle. Now that does not include any of the aftermarket modifications that I need to do to make it suitable for my travels. So if you start to think and weigh all of those options, you have to ask yourself, is the $75,000 worth it? And if you say absolutely, it is worth it 100%, okay, it's going to cost you double to modify it. I think I was looking at the front bumper and the winch plate for the Defender, and it was like $3,600. I could be wrong. All I know, it was really expensive. And that's not including the bumper. That's not including the winch. That's just the winch plate and the installation, because who knows how you even do that stuff. But it's expensive to do anything. Roof racks, spare tire carriers, all of this other stuff. There is no aftermarket opportunities out there that aren't going to cost you a fortune. So for me, that's why I said, okay, I'm not going down this rabbit hole, much to my wife's dismay, because she loves the Defender and I like the Defender, but I could not justify spending that much money on a vehicle that I don't know how to fix, that is going to cost me 3 times as much to modify. So that's why we said no on the Defender. Next on the list was the 4Runner Venture. And I know why I didn't choose it, but the 4Runner Venture is a great vehicle. So let's just break it down to the bottom line. $75,000 for the Defender, $46,000 for the Venture, and that's fully trimmed as high as you can go with their, the Venture package comes with the TRD badging, comes with the TRD wheels. The only thing it doesn't have is the TRD suspension. Like I said, I was gonna change that out anyway, so I didn't really care about that. And it came with the KDSS. So having that, like looking at that apples to apples, right? I understand the Defender is gonna cost more because it's a Land Rover. I get it. But $45,000 versus $75,000, that's a $30,000 swing. And I can tell you from a capability standpoint, there is no way on this earth that Defender is more capable than that Toyota Venture. And I really liked it. So what we did is we went and drove one. Now, we drove each one of these vehicles, and it took us time to get to the point to driving it. There was countless hours of research, then talking to the dealerships, kind of negotiating, seeing what I could get or what they were willing to bend on versus what they weren't, because when I show up to the dealership, I'm not there to like haggle. Like I want to get all that out of the way before I even show up. I want to show up, sign the paperwork, and I want to leave. So when we were looking for these vehicles prior to going and driving them, I had done all of that research, had all of those conversations. We went and drove the 4Runner, and it was really nice. Now, the interior is one of the things that I do not like about the 4Runner Venture. Also, the 6-speed transmission. I just think that's archaic when you have 8 and 10-speed automatic transmissions that are coming out in the Jeep and the Bronco. I just don't understand why they're sticking with the 6-speed. Now, the 6-speed has been around forever. It's tried and true, and I get it. But those were like the drawbacks for us. But driving the vehicle, it drove really well. It was a pretty vehicle. Everything was, my wife started to kind of come to the dark side with the Venture because she hates 4Runners, not their capability, just the way they look. So we finally went and drove it, and we actually liked it. It was a good vehicle, but the steering wheel, I swear, it was like I can't show you on camera, but it was like this big. I mean, the steering wheel was huge. It just felt really weird. So that was one thing we didn't like right off the bat. Obviously, that is just being so nitpicky, but we did not like that right off the bat. And then the 6-speed transmission, I'm not a fan of it because we are getting one of those teardrop adventure trailers. So that's in the process of being built now, but we don't want a 6-speed transmission trying to pull, you know, a 1,500, maybe 2,000 pound trailer. I just don't love that. I've done a lot of towing in my life. I'm very comfortable towing vehicles and towing trailers, but I did not want to put myself in a situation that I would ultimately not be happy with. So needless to say, if you've watched any of the videos on the channel, you know we did go with the Gladiator. But the reason we did not go with a Toyota Venture was the 6-speed automatic transmission that I think is outdated. And I have a feeling within the next year or two, they're going to be changing that. And I would be frustrated if I bought it now and next year they come out with an 8-speed. As well as the huge steering wheel. I know, it's stupid, but it's massive. I mean, it's freaking huge, like you're driving a school bus. And the interior. The interior of it, now that is, you know, obviously that's a little glamorous, but the interior of the Toyotas are just outdated. They're old. There's no reason Toyota can't update the interior to match what Jeep does. I mean, you have competition. And my thing with Toyota and what's frustrating is they have one of the best off-road vehicle lineups in the market, but yet they are just so stubborn and they will not change with the times, or at least they haven't yet. You have Bronco competition, you have Wrangler competition, you have Defender competition. There's a lot of competition in the market, and I mean, they still don't have problems selling them. So I'm just gonna shut up because Toyota probably has an idea of what they're doing. And that brings us to the Gladiator. Now, we've had a JL for a while now. I had a Sahara or something years ago. I liked it. I didn't really take it off-roading much, but I liked the platform. But the JL, it definitely has its flaws. It is loud. It is a box that drives down the road. The motor is small, and you know, that's just, it kind of is what it is. But I'm willing to sacrifice all of that for the off-road capability. And that may be just because this vehicle has taken us to places that I didn't think we could go. In a stock vehicle, make it there, 2,000 miles there, beat it up on trails for 2 weeks, and drive it 2,000 miles back without a single issue. Now, I'm sure a lot of people who drive 4Runners or other vehicles have had very similar experiences, but it's almost like you kind of fall in love a little bit. So when we were looking at the Gladiator, I've always loved them. And if you've never driven a Gladiator and you've only driven a Wrangler, what I will tell you is that the Gladiator drives like a Cadillac compared to the Wrangler. I don't know if it's just the longer wheelbase. What I do know is they use entirely different suspension on the Gladiator than they do the Wrangler. You get the, I think it's the Fox 2.0s. Don't quote me on that. But the suspension is better. It's a lot softer of a vehicle to drive. And if you understand like soft suspension versus like really hard and jarring suspension, it's a lot different in the Gladiator. When you're going down the highway at 70 miles an hour and you hit a bump in the road, and in our JL and the Wrangler, it kind of like you can feel it. It jars you. It's an extremely jarring feeling. In the Gladiator, it kind of just floats right over everything. So I don't know exactly why that is, but what I will tell you is if you're considering a Gladiator and you've never driven one, then you may want to take the opportunity to go drive one against the Wrangler, or if you have a Wrangler considering a Gladiator. It is a completely different experience. And somebody had told me that before my wife had gone and bought it and before we had looked at it. And I test drove one like 6 months ago and it was nice, but I was like, this feels the same. But after driving it for how long now? 2 months, and getting back and forth between the Gladiator and the JL, I can tell you that the Gladiator, I mean, it's night and day difference, which is so welcoming to people in the Jeep world. The price of the Gladiator was pretty much dead in the middle of the Toyota and the Defender. I think after everything was said and done, the Gladiator was roughly around $58,000 or $60,000, where the Defender was $75,000 before taxes and all that, and then the Venture was $45,000 before taxes. So It's dead in the middle. I didn't go for the cheapest option just to save money. It was something that we had to consider, and we put in lots of consideration to decide if the Gladiator was going to be the long-term expedition vehicle that we want it to be. I also know that it would have been extremely hard for me to walk away from that solid front axle in the Jeep. It's something that I'm just really comfortable with. I understand you're going to get a little bit of wandering. It's not going to be as tight of a feel in steering and driving down the highway or, you know, on curvy roads. I get that. But what you cannot take away from it is its articulation is far and beyond any vehicle on the market so far. Even the Bronco has that, I forget what they call it, but that articulating suspension system that drops the front wheels and allows for more suspension travel. It's just not the same. And I can't understand why people would choose to go if off-roading and overlanding is your deal. And this is what you intend to do mostly with the vehicle. There is nobody that can convince me to walk away from a solid front axle. It's what I'm comfortable with. It's what I know. I understand the mechanics behind how it works. And quite honestly, it's extremely old technology, but it works better than anything on the market today, in my opinion. Okay, I know I said I wasn't going to fill your mind with my opinions, but it turns out I filled your mind with my opinions. But the information I gave you about the vehicles is all absolutely accurate. And I encourage you, before you go make a purchase like this, if overlanding is something that's new to you, or you've been here for a while and you're looking to make a change, do your research. Understand what it is about the vehicles that you like and what it is about the vehicles that you don't like. You have to have a true comparison. And when you're spending this kind of money on a vehicle that is solely responsible from getting you from point A to point B and back to point A, I think it's something that every single person should take the time to understand. If you're making a purchase this big, you know, learn about it. Look at all your options before you go spending everything in your bank account on it. So, if you guys found this video helpful, I would love for you to like it, and I would love for you to subscribe to the channel so you can come along for the adventures. I'm gonna wrap this up, and I will see you on the next one.